We are two Star Wars nerds, and today we are talking about one of my favorite topics, cinematography, and more specifically, the brilliant cinematography of the Phantom Menace. This is part of our Why We Love the Prequels series, and I'm really excited for this video, actually. This is something that I've been interested in pretty much my whole life.
Yeah, I remember when I met you, you were all about film.
Oh, yeah. And I wanted to go to film school to be a cinematographer. That didn't pan out, but you know what? I still love cinematography. And so what I want to do is I want to tell you about some really interesting things and show you them as well. But just to kind of set the stage for this, remember, there are 3 different technologies being used. You have like blue screen CGI, you have live props, and you also have like on location shooting.
Right.
So this is a really hard movie to film. And because in the final product you have things being added in post.
Right.
And that's incredibly difficult. But there are pretty much all of the basic cinematography shots. There's basically 7 of them, and there's a lot more, but all of them are used here. And you have some actually really advanced stuff that I think is really well done, and it's pretty tasteful. And normally you don't see it in Star Wars. You're starting to see the artistic envelope being stretched a little bit. And first you have establishing shots. George Lucas loves establishing shots. And if you don't know what these are, it's basically this really wide shot of a city or a location just to kind of show you the general feeling of where you're about to go. But you see this a lot with mainly the planets that are being visited. You see these establishing shots, and these could honestly be printed and framed.
Yeah.
But what's really smart about these shots as well is typically you have like birds or fish or something moving in these. So there's some idea of depth. So it's not just like this is like a cool image that's moving. There is this, it's making you feel like you're looking at something that's real. You also have these extreme wide shots. And these are really helpful for seeing a subject that's small against the backdrop of something very large. And it's really purposeful to show you the grandeur of what you're in and to show just how small the subject is in comparison. And usually these are just very beautiful. And typically most of the really great shots honestly revolve around Queen Amidala as well. I think the way George Lucas wanted to actually dress Amidala up and present her, she just really fits well for these kind of shots. You have a lot of wide shots as well. It's just this varying degree of like capturing more of the emotion of the character. So you're looking less at the landscape and the scenery, and you're looking more at the character.
And I think what's really cool is I obviously don't pick up on this stuff as much as you, because it's something that you're really passionate about. But for me, when I'm looking at these shots and as you're describing them, I'm like, I can picture them exactly in my mind. And what I think they do for me, they pull me in and they make me feel like I'm a part of the story. Like I'm not just reading a book, like with those 3D and the movement. It really brings me in. It makes me a part of the story. Like I'm just sitting, up against the wall there. So I think Star Wars has always done a really good job at that.
Yeah, and that's really why I wanted to make this, because you're so right. I mean, when cinematography is done right, it's really immersive. And I think Gungan City is actually a great example of this, because you have, how hard is it to imagine an underwater city? And when you see the contrasting colors and lights and the orbs, and you just see the spherical shape of everything, even to the meeting rooms, they're spherical, and just the way everything's set up, you just get this sense of like, mystery, and you get this sense of an ancient civilization. And it's all the cinematography. Yes, it's the props and the set and all that, but the cinematography sets the stage for you to feel that way. And a few other things that I found really interesting is the way they chose to use the camera, because there is a lot of not perfectly still shots where they are intentionally a little shaky and they move around a little bit. And so when you're looking at a shot, like one that's actually really good is when Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Queen Amidala, Jar Jar, Anakin, all of them, they're actually boarding the Naboo cruiser, and they're boarding the ship. What's really interesting is that the scene is not centered and that it's actually shaky. And so typically you'd want your subjects centered, or you want to follow what's called the rule of thirds and place them into a certain section of like the view screen. But instead they intentionally like off shift everything, and they have the camera move like it's being handheld. But what that does is it makes you feel like you're there. And I think that's so brilliant, because with so much digital technology, those little tweaks of offsetting something and having the camera move, again, it's all about immersion. You just think, man, this is real. This is really taking place, and I'm watching it. And another shot that I found really interesting, and it felt a little out of place, but it was done really well, was actually through the C-3PO. It was a point of view shot. So he awakes and he has consciousness, and for the first time you see from his point of view. And even the way,
cool.
And even the way they distort the edges of the frame, and the way he's following around Anakin, it just seems like the cinematographer was just having fun. Like, this would be a really cool way to view things. And last but not least, I've been itching to get to this one. There is probably my favorite single shot in this entire movie is a slow pan from Anakin to Palpatine. And this comes right after Yoda basically says that there are always two Sith, a master and an apprentice. There's always two. There's never more, there's never less. And that's when Mace Windu basically says, well, who did we kill? You don't know. And it cuts immediately to this shot of Anakin in a slow pan, and it ends when Palpatine's in frame. And I think why that is so good is you don't see this in Star Wars. You don't see much foreshadowing in terms of cinematography. But to have the camera tell a story, I think that's it's honestly art. I don't think everything in this movie is art, but I thought that shot in particular was a really well done shot. And if that was intentional, kudos to Lucasfilm and your team. If this was not intentional, well, you guys captured something wonderful. But I could go on forever about this, but what I'm going to do for the sake of brevity is I'm going to stop it there. I'm excited to do this in future episodes of the series. But, with that, I would love to hear what you guys think of how this movie looks. How do you think they integrated the digital and the physical in cinematography? And with that, we are two Star Wars nerds, and may the Force be with you always.